We're talking obviously about the new visas for bringing immigrants into the country. Do you think it's going to work or not?
Well, I think it's a step on the right path. I mean, it doesn't tackle the major issue which we face, which is the abuse of the asylum system. It doesn't tackle the shortage of skills in this country, which is what, of course, causes a lot of the problem. But nevertheless, to try and control who's coming in, to insist that they contribute to the National Health Service, that they can't get benefits for 5 years, I think these things are right and put us on the right path.
What about a lot of people today, Anne, are talking about the fact that a lot of farming jobs are going to be very difficult to fill unless they can bring people in to do that during short contracts in the summer?
Well, the farming, and particularly the fruit farmers, have always had special arrangements under the Concordia Agreement, and I'm sure that some such special arrangement will continue. The idea of this is not to prevent people employing from abroad, but to control that employment.
Yeah.
We've always had a perfectly good work service scheme. We've always had a farm workers scheme. Work permit scheme, rather. We've always had a farm workers scheme. There's no reason why it shouldn't continue.
Do you think some of this should have been done before? I mean, you used to be Home Secretary.
Yeah.
Were there things you would like to have done then that you couldn't?
Well, I was Immigration Minister rather than Home Secretary, and the answer to that is yes, but it wasn't so concerned with this because we hadn't then had the enlargement and all the rest of it. It was more concerned, my worry at the time, and still is, the pure level of illegal immigration.
But
which is phenomenal.
I was going to talk about that next. How is it that we can stop that? Because we don't know how many people are in here illegally. Most of them will be working because they won't be able to get benefits.
Yep.
So what do we do?
Well, what happens largely is somebody comes here illegally on a lorry. He's found, sometimes only after years, but he's found. He then says, I claim asylum. And because we do not practice detention and we do not have national identity cards, by the time we come to say no, he simply disappeared and the whole process starts again. So what I proposed when I was Shadow Home Secretary was that we should automatically detain all new asylum seekers so that we can deal with their claims quickly and we know where they are if we're going to say no, and we can give a proper welcome to those to whom we're going to say yes.
You see, and I don't see why we shouldn't have some kind of detention centre before people are given full freedom of our country.
Well, as I say, I actually proposed, and indeed my successor, Oliver Letwin, also proposed, but David Cameron dropped it, that we should do exactly that when somebody said, I claim asylum, that they should be moved to a secure reception centre, not a prison, but a reception centre. You'll be able to pick out the genuine very, very quickly, whereas at the moment they're clogged up in a queue with all the others. But those to whom you're going to say no, they're there. They're on the spot. You don't have complicated issues about contacting them, and you know exactly where they are if you want to return them.
But we did have them, didn't we?
No.
No, we didn't.
Privately run ones, because I remember there was terrible stories about them.
No, they were for people who came in here, had nowhere to live, and then ended up, and then people that were found, I think, coming in. But we never had these sort of detention centres where you put everybody who came in and said, we claim asylum or whatever, put into a detention centre, and then everything checked before they. Now people come into this country and they are, I forget exactly what they're given, but then they have to go and find their own accommodation and then report back a little bit later, by which time lots of them have disappeared.
Well, that is precisely the point. I mean, that is exactly so. You've described it as it is. That is why I proposed universal detention. But as I say, it was subsequently dropped as Conservative Party policy.
Does that make us racist, wanting to have that? I don't
think so, because actually I think it benefits the genuine asylum seeker, because at the moment, he can be clogged up in a queue with 80,000 odd others. He's not distinguishable from them, but he is genuine. And I think if you put everybody immediately into reception centres, you'd actually be able to identify the genuine very quickly and give them a proper package.
But it wouldn't help us find the people who come here illegally, because we're an island and they can enter almost anywhere along the coast of this country.
That is absolutely true. And it's only when they are caught, there may be raids, for example, on workplaces, or they're caught because they commit some crime or whatever it may be, they are caught. But as I say, when they are caught, that isn't the end of the story because they immediately claim asylum.
What would the cost be? Wouldn't it be an enormous cost?
Well, no, because it would decrease. I mean, we went into this in some detail when I proposed it, and the deterrent effect would work because at the moment the message that goes out to the world is if you can get into Britain, and they're all trying at Sangatte every single day, if you can get into Britain unlawfully, you're very, very unlikely to be removed. That is the message. Now, reverse that message and say if you come here unlawfully, you'll be detained, you'll be sorted out quickly, and then you'll be sent back if you don't have a claim to stay. If that was the message, it would have a deterrent effect. So you would have immediate costs, but as the message went out, those costs would diminish.
But you see, I mean, the problem is we allow everybody to have so many, well, I'm going to appeal against this, I'm going to appeal against that, why can't we just say, look, if you've come here illegally, there's no, you can't prove that you are under some sort of threat if we send you back. Why don't we just do this? And then if somebody comes here illegally for no real reason, except they thought they could get away with it, why don't we just send them straight back?
Well, I mean, you preach to the converted. I had instances when I was immigration minister when we got people to the very doors of the plane to send them back, and they suddenly said, I claim asylum. And we said, well, your claim's been refused. I claim asylum on different grounds. And the law says you then have to process that. Now, you're quite right. I don't want to deny anybody the right of appeal. I really don't. I think that, we must have an absolutely impartial legal system which is fair to everybody, whether we want them or not. That's not relevant. It's got to be fair to everybody. But there has to be a limit, and justice should be a lot faster in this country, and then a lot more certain.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, brain surgery to get that done, does it?
Well, it's not being done, and it hasn't ever been done.
What's going to happen with Sangatte, the camp? Is that going to change?
It's closed. It closed a long time ago.
But they're still there, aren't they?
No, they're all still there.
Yeah, they're around.
They're there trying, and this speaks volumes. They're there in a safe country. France is safe. It's under the rule of law. It's a signatory to every single international convention on refugees that we're a signatory to. And yet they stay there day after day after day trying to get unlawfully into Britain. Why? Because they know that if they get into this country, they're unlikely to be removed. They know that if they apply for asylum in France, the French will say no.
Well, yeah, and the French will then send them back straight away, won't they?
They will try. Yes, all countries have some difficulty sending back, but some countries are more resolute than others. Italy, for example, is was in my time pretty resolute.
But we have the same asylum laws.
Yeah, but the problem is this, surely. A lot of these people who come and stay in France and try to get to Britain either have relatives over here or learnt English as their second language, probably down to the fact that we used to rule the world, and don't want to stay in France because they don't speak the language there.
Well, there is some of that, but you would be amazed at the numbers that do not speak English. They can all say, I claim asylum. But they do not. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them do not speak English. A lot of them have not got relatives in this country, but some have. I mean, you identify a problem that is there. They want to get into Britain because there are connections that they don't have with other countries. But the law says that they have to apply for asylum in the first safe country they come to. And the fact is that we've only just left the EU, yet this has been going on for years. And if they had applied for asylum and been accepted in France because the claim was genuine, then they could, of course, under EU freedom of movement, have come to Britain.
Yeah,
could we not do something, though, for those children, particularly the younger ones who are there, a lot of them on their own, because they do have family members
Well,
in
Lord
this
Dobbs
country.
tried to change the law, but then they sort of reversed
I mean,
it, didn't they?
it does make us look a little heartless, doesn't it?
The problem is, it does make us look heartless, that is quite true. But the problem is the loophole. Once people get it into their heads that the way that you get into this country and establish a foot in this country is to send a child here unaccompanied, that is what they will do. And we know that. That is what happens. They pay thousands to human trafficking agents to get the child here because they think that once the child is here, then in a little while the child can ask for the parents or whoever to join it.
I mean, we're not... I was talking about this. I'm going off subject now, Anne, but, you know, I'm a bit scatterbrained as it is. Just looking at some of the appalling pictures coming out of Syria at the moment where...
Awful.
Where their children, women and children are being bombed, babies are being injured. Is there nothing that the British government could be doing about this? Or
Well, I mean, first of all, the international community, of course, did take large numbers of refugees, and David Cameron exhibited huge common sense by saying that we were going to take our share only from the camps on the Syrian borders, because there we knew we had genuine refugees who were fleeing a war situation. So that was done, but if what you're asking me is can we now settle the Syrian situation, then that is going to be a vastly more complex process, and we haven't done ourselves much good with President Assad with our own attitude.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you say that, and perhaps you could have a little word with Boris and see if he might be able to come round to your way.
I don't think he'll listen to me. He only listens to Dominic Cummings.
Well, you know, he's looking for weird and wonderful people. We're putting our names forward. No, we're putting ours forward too, Anne. So you know, you could join us.
They're rebelling against Cumming, though, aren't they? They're getting a bit annoyed, aren't they?
Well, the Labour Party have the same thing with what's his face,
Alistair Campbell.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean, you have to have, don't you, somebody who advises you. And he's certainly, Cummings is not taking any prisoners, is he, Anne?
He's certainly not. Time will tell whether this approach is right or whether it's going to be very, very counterproductive.
My next question was going to be, so you're now not really doing very much.
Thanks.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe... I've heard
I'm not in politics, if that's what you mean.
I've heard you might be going into the jungle next year, or is it this year now? But
nope.
No.
What are you doing?
At the moment, I've resumed my normal life, which I had before I went into the European Parliament. I'm doing a tour nationally of these evenings, which are called an audience with.
Yeah.
I'm doing that. I hope I'll get pantomime again this year, having been deprived of it last year because of the EU.
What part will you do? What have you done? What part have you done before?
Well, the two parts that I usually get given are either the Wicked Queen in Snow White, which I love, or the Empress Chop Suey in Aladdin, which is the one I was due to be doing last year.
Oh, listen, I haven't done pantomime for a few years. I think 1996, the last one I played, Abanazar.
You played Abanazar.
Yeah, I had kids crying. In fact, the director said, if you can get a few crying, he said, we'll know you're doing well.
Ian Beale directed it, didn't he?
He did,
Yeah, it was Ian Beale, when he had the moustache.
Yeah. Did you come up and see it?
No, but I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm pleased about that. Will you perhaps try and get Nigel Farage in a pantomime with you?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think so. I think he and I had our pantomime in Brussels, quite honestly. It was a pantomime.
On reflection, Anne, do you think that was worth doing? Was it worth...
Yes, it really was. I felt at the end of it, when we finally left the EU on the 31st of January, I really had a sense of harvest home. I thought, yep, that really was worth it. It was the last thing I wanted to do. I was having a very nice life. And the last thing I wanted to do was to re-engage with active politics, let alone change party and stand for the European Parliament, of all things. But now I'm just very glad that I did. I feel I've played a part in something that worked well for this country.
It's like a friend of mine who joined the Labour Party so he could vote for Rebecca Long-Bailey because he's convinced if she gets in to lead it, the Conservatives will be in for at least 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
Well, I think he's right. I don't mean he's necessarily right to take that course of action, but I think it's a correct diagnosis that if she gets in, that's it.
Are you surprised at how the Labour Party have fallen apart, really, since, I suppose, since Tony Blair and Gordon Brown fell out?
I always said, so it's not hindsight, I always said that while Blair was winning, Labour would go along with it. But the instant he started losing, or there was any sign of Labour losing, then they would revert to their normal state, which is hard left. I mean, if you think of Kinnock, you think of Foote, this is their normal state. Now, having been out of power for 18 years, and it was 15 by the time Blair was elected, 15 by the time he became leader of the Labour Party, they were ready to try anything. And they were ready for Blair on that basis, and he was winning, so that was fine. But the instant it all started to go the other way, they reverted.
But they've never won when they've been hard left.
No, they've never won because the nation doesn't want Marxism or communism by any other name. It doesn't mind moderate Labour. It's quite liked Blair for a long time. But it doesn't want extreme socialism.
You know, the interesting thing is, having I've been around a very, very long time, and it has always amused me that every now and then you get lots of young people becoming very politically motivated, and they become socialistly inclined, don't they? And that's when, of course, Labour begin to sort of wake up and think, well, we knew we were right, let's just try again.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the sad things is people often say to me, oh dear, they're going to have to go through what we went through in the 70s before they understand. But my answer to that is no, we're all going to have to go through what we went through in the 70s if their view prevails. So I just have to hope that common sense across the nation asserts itself.
Well, we'll have to see. Do you think the Lib Dems are finished, or will they come back?
Oh, gracious me, now you mentioned them. Yes, they've had a little leadership problem as well, haven't they?
Oh, dear, oh, dear. Listen, great talking to you as always, Anne. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
If you get pantomime, let me know.